I think if I could provide a piece of advice to anyone who's setting out and writing a senior thesis or writing a thesis in general, it's to, be patient. It's a long process, and I think you're going to have moments when you hate your topic and you hate what you've written and you hate your resources and you just want to be done and change your topic and put it away, and I get that. But I think that's such a normal part of the process, and I think it's almost like a rite of passage that everyone has to go through to say, no, I hate my project. But it's okay, and I think kind of accepting that it's okay to think that way and to feel that way, and you move through them and you work through them, and you'll find a source and you'll say, oh my god, this was a great source. I'm better, I'm back, I'm ready to do this again. So it takes a moment to get there, but it's worth it in the end. And I really have no regrets in doing this. It's been a really rewarding experience, and yeah, I wouldn't change it.
The best advice I would give for future thesis writers would be to just stay calm and keep everything in perspective. One of the best pieces of advice I got from one of the second semester writers from my first semester was that a 40-page paper is just 4 10-page papers, which over a year I think is a much more reasonable thing to keep in mind than a 40-page paper if you've never written a paper that long before. So just stay calm and know that everybody around you is going through the exact same process and they're all there to help. And they need your support as much as you need their support.
You don't have to have a thesis or argument in the beginning. The primary source you use will guide you, find one later. I'm a first semester student in a colloquium, and until the end of this semester, I still didn't build up my thesis statement. Don't be too harsh to yourself. Just make sure that you have enough primary source, read them, and looking in your secondary source, I believe you will find the best one.
Enjoy the process and give it its time. Just like anything, like any craft, any art project, you're gonna get it done, but the amount of time and energy and love you put into it actually pays off. And it'll reflect with something that you're really, really proud of and just excited about.
And my advice would be to start writing as early as possible. When I started writing, it really exposed a lot of things that I needed to look at more, and my thesis and argument really just changed a lot. So I would suggest starting that as soon as possible, because it really helps sort of determine where you go from there.
One piece of advice that I would give to students just beginning the process is to know when to take a break. It's really easy to let this project kind of consume you because you want to do well and put out original research, but I don't think you should burn yourself out trying to achieve that. I think some of your best work can be done by taking a day or two away from the thesis and coming back with fresh eyes. So I would say make sure to work hard, but also keep doing things you like as breaks, and make sure you're working on your other classes equally as much, and know when it's time to stop working on your thesis for a little bit to do those other things, because your thesis will be better for it.
One piece of advice I'd give to incoming senior thesis writers is to start writing early after you've done your initial research and make plenty of time for writing.
One piece of advice I would recommend is just reading. It is really helpful once you narrow down either like a time period or specific kind of topic you want to look at. Just looking at what's already out there and what primary sources you have available to you. The way I found my topic was I was just like searching through a bunch of different primary sources, and I found something that I'd never heard about, and it turns out that no one had ever really written about it before. But I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't just looked through all the primary sources I could. And it doesn't mean necessarily like reading every single thing word for word. It could mean, like finding a box in the archive and then flipping through it and just kind of understanding what is out there, especially when you do that early on rather than kind of figuring out what you want to write and then trying to find something that fits into that. So that's what I would recommend, especially during your first semester.
A piece of advice would be that I would recommend regularly staying in contact and giving yourself goals to work toward to kind of chip away at what seems like a very large and intimidating process.
My advice to someone starting out the process is choose something you're passionate about. because you're going to be working on this project for a year or more. And if you're not passionate about the project, it's really going to be hard to do. You might think it might look good on a resume or for grad school applications, but it's not worth it to just choose something because you think it looks good. Choose something you're passionate about, because when you're on page 50 of your paper, you want to still have that same drive that you had on page 1.
I'm gonna have to really go hard at this one and say I would go for those, if it's your first year, I would really go for those awards that they offer in the history discipline at our school. I would go for, like the Hilldale. Then there's other awards too, and I would go for each of those. And they can seem very intimidating, and I know that there are some people that shy away from them because they feel like they're not ready. But I say to go for those because, one, it'll get you closer to your advisor because you'll be workshopping a piece of your writing immediately off the bat. I think that's very fruitful. And two, you have to write something like a proposal anyways. So by writing that proposal, you actually begin working on your project in a very tangible and practical way. And furthermore, you might get an award out of that process, which is very valuable. And if you plan to make this writing into something that has legs and stays around for a while, you'll want to aim for those awards. And likewise, if you're planning to go to graduate school, and in history especially, but in any discipline that requires writing, and here's a hint, they all require writing, it's important to be able to apply for awards like those and to do well when you apply, even if you don't get them. So I would suggest to try your best in everything you do, including trying to get the awards.
My advice for first semester senior thesis writers is to read as much as you possibly can as early as you can in the process. I regret not doing that as much as I could have been doing. It allows you to just find everything that you're possibly interested in and just explore naturally something that you might not consider interesting, but then maybe you stumble upon a source and all of a sudden it's like the most fascinating topic in the world. I did have that, those epiphanies over the course of my initial research, but I think that doing it a lot more and reading a lot more could have definitely helped produce a more well-rounded and perhaps a completely different idea that could have led to greater things. But you just read everything. It doesn't matter if it looks interesting or if it's not particularly the subject area. If it's at all somewhat interesting to you, I highly recommend just opening the book, finding the document, and perusing through it, because you never know what you'll stumble upon.
The advice I would give to somebody just starting out is don't fall behind. And how you don't fall behind is you continuously work on your project every week throughout the semester, both semesters, and even in the summer if you can. But when I say work, I don't necessarily mean intense, heavy work, but just small things throughout the week usually helps stay on track.
If I could give one piece of advice, I would definitely say to find very early, a way to track all your sources and quotations. You'll be reading a lot, so a lot of things will get lost in the mix. You don't want that to happen. Sometimes there will just be this one really, really great quote, and you want to be in a situation where you can easily track back, find it, and then put it into your essay. You don't want to be at the very end of the process stumbling around looking for some source you read maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
One piece of advice that I would give to someone who's thinking about writing a thesis or is just at the beginning of the process would be to choose your topic very carefully and then not to be afraid of what direction you end up going with it. You have to choose a topic that you're going to be willing to go back to over and over again, because you're going to work on this for a full year. So that's really important. That said, if you find that there's more research supporting a different topic or slightly different route, I would also encourage going down that path if it presents itself to you, because you're going to end up being the expert in the field that you're researching in. So you have to trust your judgment about what the best direction is to go in the end.
One piece of advice I would offer you on this journey is to be patient with yourself. This is a very new process for most of you, and you are all probably very smart, otherwise you would not be writing a thesis. But this is also really hard, and it's important to remember that you do not know everything, and ask questions. Ask questions to the colloquium, ask questions to your advisors. People are willing to help, and it will help you write a better thesis and create a better project. You have all of these resources at your disposal, so don't be too proud to use them.